All right, Larry Krueger here for the Krug Show, and we have an update this morning for Brock Purdy and his injury. In fact, it comes from the NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, who provided an update on Brock Purdy's injury schedule. The Niner quarterback, according to the rap sheet, is scheduled to meet with Dr. Keith Meister in Dallas on February the 21st, which is a couple weeks away, and then plans to have a surgery to repair his torn UCL on February the 22nd. This is according to Ian Rappaport. Meister is a respected guy as far as this injury is concerned, and Purdy's surgery, according to reports, will allow him to make a full recovery and potentially be ready for training camp. This is all good news. Now, um, I'm reading here on Niners Nation that according to Jeff Mueller, who's a doctor of physical therapy, the theory is that Purdy will start his throwing program towards the middle or the end of May to early June, and he will continue to progress from there. So a lot of the talk is that Brock will be ready to go, a full go by 6 months. So from the date of the surgery on February 22nd to week 1 in the NFL next year is exactly 6 months and 19 days. So that's the timeline right now. Best case scenario for Brock, seems like he might be ready at the end of the preseason. Obviously, the Niners are going to have a much better idea. Purdy himself will have a much better idea of his time frame after the surgery is done. But that is the update from Ian Rappaport that should be a full go by the end of the preseason. That's the best case scenario. Surgery to week 1, as we said, the surgery date of February 22nd to actually week 1 would be 6 months and roughly 3 weeks. We'll call it 19 days. So let's say Brock starts throwing in mid-May, maybe it's late May, maybe it's early June. It sounds like he's going to be a participant in training camp at some point and might be ready to start games, towards the end of the 49ers preseason schedule. So I would say this is overwhelming good news if you're a 49er fan. Why? Because there was concern that after looking deeper into this and consulting a number of specialists, that maybe there would be a recommendation that Brock has a full Tommy John surgery and that he would miss the entire year. And maybe even as much as 18 months. We've seen the Tommy John surgery rehab sometimes last more than a year. So the fact of the matter is that it sounds like what Kyle Shanahan kind of talked about at the end of the year press conference that included Kyle and John Lynch, that is not just a best case scenario, that is the actual scenario for Brock Purdy. All right. What does that do to the 49er depth chart? Well, the 49ers are still in the same situation. They want to extend Brandon Ayuk. They want to extend Nick Bosa. They got 25 free agents to deal with. And Purdy, I would imagine, is the number 1 quarterback going into next year. Trey Lance, who should be healthy and ready to roll within a few weeks, heard his interview at Radio Row with Rich Eisen from the NFL Network. And, it's like every time I hear Trey talk, I like Trey even more and more. He's just so grounded and so solid. So you got Brock, you have Trey. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to walk away in free agency. I don't know the status of Josh Johnson. So that's the quarterback room. Johnson's also a free agent and can do, they can either bring him back or move on. Now, what are the 49ers going to do? The one thing here is that I think now this gives the 49ers options at quarterback. Why? Because they have a reasonable expectation that they're going to have 2 young quarterbacks on rookie deals, which obviously does not take up a lot of cap room. But I think the thinking, before today was that there was a lot of unknown about what the profile of that next quarterback who's going to share the room with Brock and Trey is really going to look like. And we talked a lot about guys like Andy Dalton and veteran quarterbacks and guys who had done it before. Now I think the 49ers have more latitude. I really do, because you've got 2 young quarterbacks who are obviously going to be there. And one, you may not need an Andy Dalton. You may not need somebody of that ilk. I do think you need a third quarterback that can play. So I don't think it's going to be one of these guys that are just there for the practice squad to be promoted up and down, figurehead. I think that third quarterback's got to be able to actually play, whether it be a younger player or an older player. But I think now what this news today means for the 49ers is that they have an opportunity, if they want, to go into the draft and draft a Malik Cunningham out of Louisville, a Jake Haener out of Fresno State, and have a young player be that third quarterback. And maybe that's the best thing. If they're going to have the equivalent of like a quarterback school with Shanahan, the offensive coaching staff, and most specifically Brian Greasy kind of leading the way on the teacher side, well, then maybe it's best to have three young players all kind of ascending and learning at the same time. Brock being the most polished, Trey obviously right there as the next, and then plug in that rookie. So I think this is really good news. Why? Because I really like the 49ers options in the draft. They've got 10 picks. There's a group of quarterbacks that aren't going to go in the first round that are really interesting. And that group includes Tanner McKee from Stanford, and a number of other guys. The guys that have stood out to me in the All-Star game so far, definitely Jake Haener, who in a lot of ways is a lot like Brock Purdy in that he is 6 feet. He's a 4-year starter. He's very polished. He's a winner. He's a very accurate quarterback. He's incredibly competitive. Maybe Haener would be a good fit. If they're going for a veteran quarterback and maybe a young player that has some NFL experience, could be a good fit, but not necessarily somebody like an Andy Dalton or somebody who's an NFL starter who has started NFL games. I really like Malik Cunningham a lot. I thought Cunningham to me showed a lot in the All-Star games. He's 6 feet, 188 pounds. So he also was kind of challenged size-wise. But man, he can really run. He can break tackles. He throws a really nice ball. He was productive at Louisville. I like what I saw from him. I like the interview that I saw they did with him. He's obviously, a really cerebral player. So I really kind of like Malik Cunningham and Jake Haener in the draft. And I think this news today allows the 49ers to kind of go in whatever direction they want to go when it comes to their quarterback. So it should be interesting. But good news, I think, if you're a 49er fan, really good news today on Brock Purdy. He's not going to miss a year. He's not going to be out 18 months. It sounds like conservatively he could be ready anytime in training camp or maybe during the preseason. And if you have a young quarterback room, that includes Brock and Trey and potentially a rookie that you grab in April, maybe you give those young quarterbacks some really good reps in the summer program. And if Brock's not ready to roll at the end of preseason, you go with Trey Lance and you wait for Brock to get healthy and you use your rookie as the number 2 early in the year. And if Brock is ready to roll, then maybe Brock is the starting quarterback and Trey is number 2 and this rookie is number 3. But I think good news for the 49ers. I think this move obviously means that Brock's injury is not as severe as some had feared, which is good news. The fact that it won't bleed into next year, it sounds like, is good news. And the fact that it now opens up the 49er options for what they can potentially do with that third quarterback, I think is also really good news. I mean, if you look at the draft class this year for quarterbacks, it's a really interesting draft class. And you're talking about, obviously everybody wants, at the top of the draft, you've got, the players that are going to Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Will Levis. And those 3 guys are first round picks. I think Anthony Richardson from Florida is also a first round pick. Hendon Hooker from Tennessee had a terrific year this year in Knoxville. I think he's probably a day 2 pick. And Tanner McKee from Stanford may be a late day 2 pick. He may be an early day 3 pick. 6'6", 225, very accurate. And then there's other guys. Some people like Jaron Hall quite a bit from BYU, who's also, vertically challenged. He's 6 feet. Jake Haener's 6 feet. There's Max Duggan from TCU, who's 6'1", coming off a tremendous year for Sonny Dykes. In the All-Star game, I was impressed by Clayton Tune, who's got a good arm, good zip on his passes, and a real solid base. He's also listed at 6'2", 216 pounds. Stetson Bennett on the Georgia Bulldogs is listed at 5'11". But, I think Stetson Bennett showed that he knows how to play the position. And there are other guys, Tanner Morgan, Aiden O'Connell. I mentioned to you guys, I love Malik Cunningham out of Louisville, Adrian Martinez from K-State, Tim DeMorat from Fordham. All interesting prospects for sure. And there are others in this draft, but those are the ones that stand out to me. If I could have a quarterback room next year of Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, and Malik Cunningham, I'm thrilled. If I could have a quarterback room next year of Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Tanner McKee, I'm thrilled. If I could have a quarterback room of Purdy and Lance and Jake Haener next year, I'm thrilled. Why? Because I think there's 3 quarterbacks with upside who can play. There's also 3 quarterbacks on rookie deals, and that will enable you to re-sign Brandon Ayuk, and will enable you to re-sign Nick Bosa, and maybe even compete in the free agent market for a Caleb McGarry at offensive tackle, and maybe even a few upgrades throughout the roster. So what we found out today basically just means that the 49er quarterback room could be the cheapest quarterback room in the entire league this year, with Brock and Trey and a third quarterback all coming in on reasonable deals. I was saying Andy Dalton, over the last couple of weeks, but realistically, you're going to have to pay that veteran quarterback, even if it isn't Andy Dalton or an Easton Stick, who's another interesting name, played with Trey at North Dakota State. You're still going to spend roughly, I would anywhere between $3 to $10 million on a veteran backup quarterback. You can now save that $3 to $10 million and go put it somewhere else, because you don't have to have a veteran there, because Brock's going to miss, half the season, and you need a veteran just in case Trey's not ready. Now, I think with Brock there and Trey there, the rookie avenue is back open to the 49ers as the third quarterback spot. I do think it's important that they have 3 quarterbacks this year, but it's great news for Bosa. It's great news for Ayuk. And it's great news for Niner fans that want to see the Niners build up their roster to run with the Chiefs and the Eagles and the very best teams in pro football. Having the cheapest quarterback room in the entire league is an awesome place to start. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll have more on the Krug Show throughout the offseason. But there you go, a little breakdown. The big story of the day, Brock Purdy. We know now, according to the rap sheet, it's going to be more like what Kyle Shanahan referenced at his press conference, more like a 6-month rehab and not a 12 or 18-month rehab for Brock. And that is great news for the 49ers.